Hi everyone. As you can see, I am not in Bali. I mentioned in my previous video that I was supposed to be going to Bali this weekend. Unfortunately, I decided to cancel that trip. I wanted to make a video to explain why I canceled because I don't think it's as obvious as I was nervous about being infected with the coronavirus. Instead, actually, I felt pretty confident that I wouldn't be infected with the coronavirus, but I was worried for other reasons, mainly travel bans. So I've been following the situation of the coronavirus in Indonesia pretty closely over the past few days. And while there are no current cases in Bali, there's also no testing in Bali. And Indonesia's been criticized by other countries for their response in the coronavirus. And the government in Indonesia has tried to assure people that they're taking proper measures, and the Isle of Gods is being looked after. They're doing a lot of prayer. They're getting ready, setting up hospitals. But in all the reports I found online, the actual testing of the coronavirus has been very minimal, and that's why we're only seeing the 2 cases in Jakarta and nowhere else in Indonesia, despite Indonesia having a very strong economy tie to China. So I began to think, okay, well, maybe it's as good as they say and there really are no cases. But then I also found some reports online of several tourists coming home from Bali and being tested positive for the coronavirus. My worry there, again, I mentioned I'm not worried about being infected with the coronavirus. My worry there is that as new testing for Indonesia and testing at all in Bali is going to happen in the next week or so, according to certain reports, I think that we're going to see a huge spike in cases. And if there is a huge spike in cases, then the Singapore government will place a 14-day mandatory quarantine on anyone that's traveled to Indonesia. So what that means, I was supposed to go to Bali yesterday, last night, and then I would return Sunday. If within any of the 14 days after I get home from Bali, the Singapore government decides to place a self-quarantine saying anyone that's been to Bali or Indonesia in the past 14 days now has to go into mandatory quarantine for an additional 14 days. That means that I could be home for 10 days. I could be fine, I could be going to work, but as soon as that ban's in place, 14 days from that ban is when I can't leave my apartment and I'm self-quarantined. And for me, risking 14-day self-isolation for 3 days in Bali just wasn't worth it. And the reality is that there's a pretty significant chance that a ban is gonna be in place. Or maybe not a ban, but the quarantine is gonna be in place. So I looked at it thinking, okay. And I didn't make my decision until like 3 hours before my flight. My flight was at 3:45 yesterday, and I made the decision at noon because I really, really struggled with it. I really wanted to go to Bali. I felt safe going. It's been a trip that I've wanted to do for a long time. But then the idea that I could be placed in this quarantine, especially because the quarantine would overlap with my birthday. Maybe that's my selfish thinking, but okay, I just moved to a new country, I'm beginning to make some really good friendships, and then boom, birthday, gotta be self-quarantined for 2 weeks by myself in my apartment. You cannot leave, and the government is very strict about that. There's no, I'll go to the pool or I'll go grocery shopping. Nope. So, I decided to forgo my trip. I look at it as, all right, in reality, I was going to arrive Thursday night. Friday, I was going to work from home with my coworker. We were going to work from the Airbnb. Friday night, I'd go out and socialize. We'd explore the night scene of Bali. Saturday, I was going to potentially do Ubud, which is, for those of you that don't know where the temples are, it's a very spiritual place. There's the elephant sanctuary. And then Sunday on the agenda, we potentially were just going to go to a spa or hang out at the beach. So for 3 days, one of which I would have been working. I didn't think the risk was worth it. My hope is that maybe there really are no cases in Bali. And if that is the situation, then I'll be able to go to Bali in a few weeks, and I'll schedule another trip in April. But for now, I canceled my trip. It was a sunk cost. I didn't get the money back on my flights or anything. But I'm hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst, I guess. That's my mentality. I feel safe in Singapore. I feel good in Singapore. Why would I risk that? So that's why I canceled my trip. I'm sad about it. But I think it was the right decision, and I'm looking forward to having an awesome weekend in Singapore.